Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really plunging into some profound spiritual teachings. We've got a stack of sources here, mainly key bits from Srimad Bhagavatam and some commentaries.
That's right. Texts that talk about things that, well, really shape our lives.
Exactly, association, attachment, and this whole idea of illusion or Maya. It's deep stuff.
It really is.
But our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear, I think. We want to uncover the core problem these texts are pointing to, explore the maybe surprising dangers they highlight,
Mm-hmm.
and then find the practical path they actually offer for, spiritual freedom right here, right now.
Yeah, absolutely. These ancient texts, they give a remarkably direct and, yeah, sometimes quite challenging perspective on the energies driving our experience in the material world.
So we're looking at the root cause.
We're looking at what they pinpoint as the absolute root cause of, well, suffering and getting tangled up in things, and crucially, how this wisdom tradition suggests we navigate it all.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Where do we start? What's the core problem, the main force they keep coming back to?
Okay, so the Srimad Bhagavatam, especially in verses like SB 3.31.34 and the ones that follow, it really identifies sexual desire as a fundamental, pervasive energy in this material world.
Okay, sexual desire,
Mm.
but not just biological.
Not just biological, no, it's presented as something deeply woven into Maya, the illusory energy.
Illusion.
Mhm.
So the desire hooks us into the illusion. Is that the idea?
That's basically it. It's identified as the primary root cause of getting entangled materially, the force that binds us most strongly to the cycle of, birth and death.
And suffering.
And the suffering that comes from thinking we are this temporary body, it's seen as the sort of engine keeping us focused on the temporary, making us forget our actual spiritual identity.
Okay, if that's the engine,
Mhm.
how does it get its power? The sources put a huge emphasis on association segment.
Yes, association. It's highlighted as incredibly potent, like it can work for good or for ill, powerfully.
Right.
And the texts give some very strong warnings about who we associate with, especially people driven by that root entanglement we just mentioned.
Do they actually list types of people?
They do, yeah. A pretty specific list of company considered, well, dangerous for spiritual progress.
Wow. Okay, walk us through that. Who are we talking about here?
Well, the texts say, avoid asathu, wicked or sinful people. Also ashanto, those who are coarse, violent, lacking peace. Then musha fools, people without spiritual understanding. And kantatmasu. This one's interesting. It literally means cut off from the self.
Cut off from the self.
Yeah, meaning those who lack self-realization, who are effectively destroying their own spiritual chances.
Destroyers of the self. That's intense phrasing. It's not just external harm. It's like internal.
Exactly. It goes on, shishio, pitiable people, those really trapped in material suffering. And then, quite vividly, yotkura mesaka.
What does that mean?
It gets translated as dancing dogs in the hands of a woman or playthings of women.
Whoa. Dancing dogs. That's incredibly strong language. Almost shocking. What's the point behind that?
Well, I think it is meant to shock you, to really emphasize how severe the entanglement can be.
Okay.
The metaphor suggests someone so completely controlled by material attraction, specifically sexual desire, and, according to the text, the whims of the opposite sex, that they lose all their independence, all dignity. Like a puppet or, a dancing doll.
Utterly controlled by material forces.
Right. And text 32 adds to this, saying this harmful association includes people whose main focus, their main effort, is just satisfying the urges of the genitals and the stomach. Shitodara katodhyama.
So people whose lives basically revolve around sex and food.
That's a gist. And you mentioned seeing a point from the Kama Sandarbha.
Yeah, that the danger isn't just direct association, but even associating with men who associate with women in that materialistic way.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's catching.
Exactly. It's like the contamination spreads. The entanglement isn't just direct. It comes through proximity to those already deep in it. It
Yeah.
really underlines how pervasive this influence is seen to be.
Okay, that makes a chilling kind of sense. So
Yeah.
if you do hang out with people like this, focused on these material urges, what actually happens? What do you stand to lose?
Well, text 33 gives this really devastating list of what gets lost. You lose truth,
Satya.
truth itself.
Yeah. And cleanliness, silky, mercy, daya, silence, muna, which here seems to mean like gravity or thoughtfulness.
Okay.
Intelligence, beauty, like inner and outer radiance, shyness, fear, fame, shared forgiveness.
It keeps going.
Oh yeah. Control of the mind, chamo, control of the senses, damo, and even good fortune. Bhaga.
Wow. So you lose truth, intelligence, mercy, self-control. Even good fortune and beauty. It's like associating with materialistic people just strips away the very foundation you need for any kind of real self-improvement or, spiritual growth. That's a powerful way to sum it up.
Yeah.
It leaves you spiritually bankrupt, essentially.
And what does that lead to? The outcomes must be pretty bad.
They're presented as severe, yeah. Text 32 warns about entering hellish conditions. Tamo vishati purvavat. You lose the ability to even understand the ultimate goal.
Which is?
Developing consciousness of Krishna or Vishnu in this tradition.
Hmm.
You become, well, unfortunate, unable to improve your material situation or even gain lasting respect or fame.
And forget about things like yoga or meditation.
Right. Any attempts fail because you've lost that fundamental control over your mind and senses. The foundation's just gone.
So it traps you.
Exactly. It leads to perpetual material bondage, being stuck in that cycle of birth and death, trapped in the false idea, I am this temporary body.
Now, this leads to something really striking in the sources. A warning that sounds almost unbelievable. Something about suicide.
Yes. That one definitely gets your attention. For someone who's actually serious about spiritual life, a genuine seeker, the texts state that this kind of association with materially minded people is more dangerous than suicide.
More dangerous than suicide. Okay, hold on. How can associating with someone be worse than ending your own life? What's the logic there?
Well, from the perspective of these texts, right, suicide ends this particular life, but it doesn't necessarily solve the underlying spiritual problem. The soul just continues its journey.
Carrying the same baggage.
Potentially, yeah. Carrying the same material desires and tendencies into the next situation. But this kind of association, they argue, destroys the very potential for spiritual progress in this life. It keeps you willingly bound to suffering by actively feeding the very attachments you need to overcome.
So it's like spiritual death in slow motion.
That's a good way to think about it. Seen as ultimately more damaging in the long run than just physical death alone.
That puts an incredible weight on who you choose to spend time with. It's not just a small influence, it's potentially derailing everything.
Exactly.
And within this whole framework of dangerous attachments, the texts really single out one attachment to the opposite sex. Why is that seen as like the peak form of Maya's power?
According to text 35, yeah, that specific attachment creates a deeper infatuation, a stronger bondage than attachment to, say, wealth or fame or power or anything else material.
Really? More than money or power?
That's what's stated. It's presented as Maya's most effective tool for keeping the soul trapped. It's even explicitly called a gateway to hell when it's pursued just for material enjoyment.
Gateway to hell. Wow, again with the strong language. How do they elaborate on that? And crucially, how do they separate the attachment from the actual people?
That's a really important distinction to make. The texts are describing the illusory energy manifesting through attraction. They're not just condemning individuals wholesale.
Okay, good.
So from the perspective presented, the opposite sex can act as a powerful manifestation of Maya, primarily when viewed through that lens of material attraction and the chase for temporary pleasure.
Can you give us the specifics? How is it described in the texts?
Sure. So for men, according to these sources, women can function as Maya through their enchanting power. They describe beautiful features that can captivate even great souls. It highlights material allurements, decoration, the promise of enjoyment. It's even described metaphorically as a hidden danger, like a well covered with grass that looks safe but leads to death.
Because the allure hides the ultimate suffering.
Exactly. It's called the topmost cause of material bondage. The sources bring up stories like Pingala
Right.
and that moth analogy, which relates to attraction to form, Rupar, and how it leads to destruction. And they point out, pretty relevantly, how modern industries heavily exploit this attraction through all the senses: sight, smell, sound, taste, touch.
Yeah, you can definitely see that today, the constant sensory bombardment tied to attraction.
Right. And importantly, the texts stress this is mutual. It's not one-sided. Men also act as a mutual gateway to hell for women if the attachment is purely material.
Okay, how is that described from the source's viewpoint?
Often, the man is seen as this sort of illusory provider, the one who gives wealth, children, a house, assets.
The fighter figure.
Yeah, and that complex relationship built on material dependency and what you think you're gaining becomes the source of entanglement for the woman, too. Then there's that other very stark metaphor.
Oh, yeah.
Where children and wives are called tigers, jackals, and foxes who take away one's assets.
Whoa. Okay, that's another one that sounds incredibly harsh. Again, what's the intended meaning? Are they saying your family members are predators?
No, not at all, literally. It's crucial to see the metaphor. The text isn't saying your loved ones are actually animals.
Okay.
It's using them to describe the effect of letting material attachment to those relationships become the absolute central focus. Just like those animals might steal physical things, if you let attachment to the material aspects of family life accumulating wealth for them, focusing only on their material happiness over any spiritual progress, then that attachment can steal your spiritual assets.
Your time, your energy, your focus.
Exactly. Steal them away from the path of liberation. It's a warning against identifying solely with the material side within relationships, not a judgment on the relationships themselves.
That context is really important. It's about the nature of the attachment, not the people involved.
Absolutely.
And the sources say this particular attraction is extra strong in Kali Yuga, our current age.
Yes, and that Vedic culture historically tried to regulate association precisely because this energy is so potent. The idea is that without conscious effort and wise regulation, both for yourself and as a society, this natural force easily leads down the path of entanglement and suffering, not liberation.
Okay, so the sources paint this really vivid, maybe even, intense picture of the problem and the dangers. It could sound pretty overwhelming, frankly.
It can, yeah.
But they don't just leave us there feeling doomed, right? This whole tradition must offer a way out.
Absolutely not. They pivot clearly from describing the trap to showing the way to freedom. And the first, most foundational step is basically the mirror image of what we just discussed.
Right.
Association.
So step one, actively avoid that bad company we listed, the materially focused people.
That's crucial, yes. But it's not just about avoidance. It's about actively seeking good company. The sources really emphasize associating with Krishna-conscious souls, with devotees, people who are genuinely pursuing spiritual life and aiming their energy upwards.
And they mention the ISKCon community as a place to find that.
It is recommended, yeah, as a practical place to find that kind of supportive association. The sources even get practical, advising brahmacharis, those practicing celibacy, to travel in groups. They use that analogy of the single twig versus bundled twigs.
Ah, right. A single twig snaps easily, but a bundle is strong. So there's strength and protection in numbers with like-minded people.
Exactly. Mutual support, mutual protection. And also advising, for those dedicated celibacy, very limited interaction with the opposite gender, strictly for necessary business.
Makes sense within that framework.
Mm.
Okay, beyond choosing your company wisely, what other tools or practices are key?
Well, self-control and knowledge are presented as vital internal work. Practicing celibacy is explicitly called essential for spiritual perfection.
Why essential?
Because it conserves and redirects what's seen as a very, very powerful energy. Controlling all the senses, but especially that sex urge, is hammered home. But this control isn't just willpower, it's built on knowledge.
Knowledge of what?
Knowing your true identity, that you are spirit soul, fundamentally different from this temporary material body you're currently in.
So knowing who you really are gives you the leverage to control the body's demands.
Precisely. It totally shifts your perspective and your motivation. It also involves really understanding suffering, clearly seeing the temporary, often miserable nature of material existence.
And that helps you detach.
Yeah, that understanding helps you develop detachment to start seeing material pursuits and needs as ultimately unwanted if your goal is lasting, eternal happiness.
And guidance. Teacher seems indispensable in these texts.
Absolutely crucial. They stress finding a bona fide guru, a genuine spiritual teacher. They call the guru a mercy manifestation of the Supreme.
Wow.
And following their instructions is likened to grabbing a strong rope to pull you out of the material well. It also mentions approaching senior Vaishnavas, advanced practitioners, with sincere, submissive questions as part of getting that guidance.
So there's this idea of Krishna within guiding you, but the guru is the external guide.
That's the concept, yes. The guru is the external manifestation of that divine mercy and knowledge, making it accessible.
Okay, so wise association, internal discipline through knowledge and self-control, and external guidance from a teacher. What's presented as the ultimate solution, the overarching strategy.
The ultimate solution given for overcoming Maya, that powerful illusion, is Krishna consciousness itself.
And that's not just about suppressing things.
No, it's much more about transformation and redirection. It means consciously transferring all our powerful attachments, even the ones within family relationships, like husband and wife, away from the temporary material objects and towards Krishna, the Supreme.
So you engage everyone and everything in Krishna conscious duties, and the purely material attachments just lose their grip.
Exactly. They naturally fade in importance. This is what's called real renunciation, or yukta vairagyam. It doesn't necessarily mean giving everything up physically, but using everything, your skills, your relationships, your resources, in service to the Lord without being personally, possessively attached to the results or the things themselves.
Active devotional service.
That's the core practice, yes, the active expression of that redirected love and energy.
And is there one specific practice they really highlight for our current age?
Yes, very prominently. Chanting the holy names, especially the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, it's presented as something anyone can do, anywhere, anytime.
Except,
Very accessible and powerful enough, they say, to save one from the entanglement of material life. Ultimately, though, surrendering to the Lord is stated as the only way to truly overcome Maya, because her power is considered insurmountable by just our own limited efforts.
so focusing on the Lord's qualities, his beauty, that helps pull the mind away.
That's the idea. It gives the mind a higher, more attractive focus than the temporary allurements of the material world.
Now, this next part is really interesting and quite practical, I thought. The lessons from nature, these 5 creatures that teach us about the senses.
Ah, yes, that section is beautiful, almost like poetry. It makes the whole idea of sensory attachment very concrete, very tangible. It teaches detachment by showing how these creatures get trapped and even destroyed by their own uncontrolled senses.
Right. Give us the examples again.
Okay, so there's the elephant. It's trapped by its intense desire for touch, often lured into a pit by the scent or presence of a captive female elephant.
Clutch. Okay.
Then the deer, killed because it's attracted to sound like a hunter's horn that lures it out into danger.
Sound. What about the bee?
The bee gets trapped by its attraction to fragrance. It lingers too long on a flower, enjoying the smell, and then the flower closes up at sunset and the bee can't get out.
Wow. So that warns against over-attachment to, like, pleasant environments or maybe even food.
Could be interpreted that way, yeah.
Yeah.
Over-attachment to superficial delights. Then there's the fish.
Easy one. Taste.
Exactly. Killed by its desire for taste, snapping at the bait on a hook. A clear lesson about the power of the tongue, the palate, the stomach,
And the 5th one.
the moth. Destroyed by its attraction to form, to light, it flies straight into a fire. This one is specifically linked to sight, rupa, and how lust, that powerful attraction to form, can just overwhelm your intelligence and lead you straight into destruction.
So these 5 creatures, they become like symbolic teachers, gurus even, showing the deadly results of letting anyone's sense run wild.
That's exactly the lesson presented. If you really want detachment, the text suggests look at what happened to them, learn from their fate. The point is made that someone lusty to enjoy the illusory form of the opposite sex will get buried in illusion, just like that moth flying into the fire.
It really makes the abstract idea of sense control feel very real, very high stakes.
It does.
Now, there was also a point, maybe seemingly smaller, in the source material about letting go of blame. How does that fit into this bigger picture of detachment and self-control?
I think it fits in as a really important internal practice that supports everything else. The advice is about acknowledging your own feelings, your reactions, but without getting stuck there, taking responsibility for how you choose to respond to things.
Instead of blaming others or circumstances.
Right. Actively choosing to let go of blaming others for your situation or how you feel, because as one quote put it, you'll never heal or build anything worthwhile from a base of blame.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Blame keeps you stuck, looking outward, feeling like a victim. But the path these texts lay out requires internal work, taking ownership of your consciousness, your attachments. Releasing blame kind of clears the internal space you need to actually make those changes in association, self-control, and focus.
So pulling it all together.
Yeah, what's really striking is this incredibly consistent message. Uncontrolled attachment, especially when it's fueled by sense gratification and nurtured by hanging out with people focused on that. It's presented as a powerful, almost insidious trap.
A trap, yeah.
But, and this is key, the texts don't just leave it there. They say that same energy, that same powerful capacity we have for love, for connection, for attachment, it can be liberated. It can be redirected.
That's right. It's not just about avoiding the bad. It seems fundamentally about transformation. Taking that incredibly strong force of, well, love and desire, and consciously aiming it away from the temporary stuff towards the eternal, towards the divine.
Exactly. It's a really practical spirituality when you look at it. It's not saying deny your nature or crush your feelings. It's saying work with that powerful nature by redirecting its currents.
Oh.
Through these structured practices we talked about, through choosing your association wisely, cultivating that knowledge and self-control, getting guidance, and ultimately pouring that energy into devotional service, into Krishna
So
consciousness.
the core takeaway seems pretty clear. Mayo's influence, especially through attachment, is strong, it's everywhere, but crucially, it's not unbeatable.
Right. It can be overcome, according to these texts, by consciously cultivating that higher consciousness and surrendering to that higher reality.
What really stands out to you from this deep dive, thinking about it now, for me, it's definitely that challenge to look, maybe uncomfortably, at my own associations. Where am I really directing my energy, my affection?
Yeah, that's powerful. And maybe it raises a final question for you, the listener, to chew on. If misdirected attachment is identified here as the #1 cause of getting stuck, how consciously are you actually working to transfer your attachments towards something higher, something more lasting?
Definitely something to reflect on as you continue your own learning journey. We really hope this deep dive has given you some valuable food for thought from these ancient sources. Join us next time for another deep dive into a topic you're curious about.